And Juan Antonio Bayona, the tree has been always an allegory for spiritual growth. Dabo Sweeney said, I'm always just focused on being great where I'm at and blooming where I'm planted. Elizabeth Appel said, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And now Kathleen will share her lesson on her trip to Unity, take 1.
It's so good to be back.
Glad you met.
If I could get on the stool, I would be fine. Okay, here we go. All right. Yeah, it's really good to be back, and I thought that this would be a great way to share my journey with you. You're all a part of it. For those of you who don't know, I just got back from Unity Village for a week of intensive classes for my master's program. And then the following week was intensive interviews. They call them L&Os for short, licensing and ordination interviews. These people want to know everything I'm doing. They want to interview us, make sure we're on track, make sure we're understanding the teachings, make sure we're not going off into left field somewhere. And it was an amazing, stressful, great experience. So I'll start with the end. I passed everything. I'm still good. Okay, so there is no concern. When you go to L&Os, there are 2 options. You are either have no concerns or you are on concern. And I have no concerns at this point.
All right.
I mean, I have some concerns, but they don't have any concerns, right? So what I did was I drove out there. I left on Tuesday after work. I left at 3 p.m. a week ago Tuesday and drove. I was driving to Missouri. Why? Why would you drive, Kathleen? Because I can take whatever I want to bring with me in my car. I can't do that on an airplane. And then I'm at the mercy of when does the plane arrive? When is the shuttle going to get there? The shuttle is expensive, by the way, because the airport is almost an hour away from Unity Village. So it's a challenge. So I prefer to have my car because also there's no restaurants on the campus of Unity Village. So you still have to go out to eat for dinner. They provide breakfast at the hotel, and then lunch we can get at the bookstore. You can get sandwiches and stuff. They have a marvelous bookstore there. By the way, I'm kind of thinking about maybe doing a little journey with this congregation either next year or the year after to Unity Village. Yes. Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah, we'll figure that out. You know, logistics and all that stuff and how to get there, but it might be fun to either go out for a specific retreat that they have going on, or just to go out and just to visit. We can get a tour with a couple of...
2020 sounds good.
2020 sounds good, yeah. I'm still in school, so we got to figure that all out, but we'll look at it. So the good news is I'm on track to graduate June of 2021. It is a 5-year program if you only take 2 classes per semester every year for 5 years. So that's, 2 master's level classes a month or a semester is enough, especially when you're working full-time and you're a spiritual leader of a church. So a lot going on. And that was the focus of my L&O intensives. There are 2 teams of ministers that interview you. You have to give a 7-minute talk. And you know what I talked about? I talked about you guys. I talked about release and embrace. That series of talks that I did during Lent. Now, I switched it up a little bit. I'm going to tell you a secret. Don't post this on wherever it goes. I'm just teasing. I did not tell them that I didn't care for the Lenten booklet, and so I changed it from Fast and Feast to Release and Embrace. I told them, we finished Fast and Feast, and we want to keep going, so let's take it up a notch, right? So that worked too. Yeah. And these 7-minute talks, it gives them an idea of our style of speaking. It gives them an idea of what we're talking about. They ask us to make sure we put in certain components. I have to have a a Bible verse, I have to have a quote from a Unity author, I have to, there's lots of different components. It's a lot of work. And when I thought about how am I going to share this with all of you, I thought, wow, there's a lot to this that you don't even realize. Because you've got these ministers who have been ministers for at least 5 years, if not longer, judging. Right? At least it feels like judging. They're really not. They're actually there to help me. They're actually there to coach us, is the best way I can put it. So my 7-minute talk for the first team of ministers, have no idea if I hit the time level or not. Because the minister, the head minister that was on the panel distracted me. He got confused and thought that my time was up already. I was only 2 minutes into the talk, and he raised his hand as if I was supposed to stop. And I thought, what's wrong with this? And he went, oh, my mistake, sorry. And I had to get back on track. And you know what? I did.
He did that on purpose. He didn't.
No, I don't think, I think it was an honest mistake because he was using someone else's phone. Yeah, and it was funny. And the second minister whose phone they were using to time it, she had wild purple hair. It was like neon purple. I'm not talking like the dark burgundy, I'm talking like wild purple hair. She was a hoot. She was so funny. She was going out of sequence. They have a list of 7 to 10 pages of questions that they can ask us. And each minister will ask a question. After your talk is done, they will ask you a question. And so the questions go like this. Tell us a time when you had a conflict with a member of your board, what you did, what you learned from it, and how you do it again.
Yeah.
So, like first of all, 4-part questions when you're nervous is hard to remember. And so you have to try and make sure you hit the answers for all 4 parts. And what's interesting for me, I don't know if it was the same way for the other students, but what's interesting for me is as the questions came up, answers came to me immediately. Examples came to me immediately. All of the questions, for the most part, are experiential. They want to know what we're doing. Now, not every student is a spiritual leader of a Unity church. Some of the students are training to become leaders, but they don't have a role like that in their church yet. And that's where the internships later on are going to help them because it'll give them hands-on experience. But so tell us a time when, tell us a time when, tell us a time when. From those questions, they can see what we need to work on. So my answers tended to fall into the category of the need for perfection. Shocking? Not really.
Sorry.
So, the need for perfection. I tend to strive for excellence now, not perfection. But the questions brought it up for me, and I would give examples of how I don't do that anymore, or I'm not doing that as much anymore, right? And I use the example of school when I had an A- going into the final weeks of the semester of a particular class, and I was freaking out. Now this was a year ago, so I don't do this anymore, but a year ago it was really bothering me. Every time I signed in onto that website, they give you your running grade, and it's A-, and that was the first time that I had ever seen that, and it just was like, no, this can't be.
This is not acceptable.
Now, as it turns out, it was a class called Self-Awareness. And before I submitted my final paper, I finally broke down and called the teacher and asked him, can you tell me why I'm getting lower grades in these papers? I was afraid to do that, to be honest with you. I was afraid of what he was going to tell me. I was afraid he was going to tell me my writing style was not good, my grammar wasn't, whatever the case may be, and I just didn't call him. But then I finally gave in because my desire to get an A was greater than my fear of asking him. So, bottom line, I called him up, and he pointed out to me that in my assignments for a self-awareness class, keep this in mind, I would take, if it was a 5-page paper, it would take me till page 4 to start talking about me. I would talk about everybody else. I would talk about what our study buddy group talked about. I would talk about what we discussed in class. I would talk about all the wonderful principles that we were talking about, but I never talked about how it affected me at all until at least page 4. And so I went, oh, self-awareness, okay. And so I used that as my answer to the ministers this past week. Yeah, it was very interesting, and it also helps me to see how far I've come, and that's why I went into this mode of the rosebud, and blossoming. We're all doing that. I'm doing it in one particular area, but we're all doing it in our own lives, blossoming. When the pain of staying in the bud gets too great, right? We have no choice but to blossom. And it's magnificent, that divine energy that is within us it's there. You can try to deny it all you want, but it's still there anyway. And that's what's happening. So, the week before I was in youth and family ministry class, and so we got to be kids. For that one day, it was a long day. It was 8 hours of demonstration. We had to do a 10-minute children's talk. And we had to do a 30-minute workshop, like a group event for multi-generational, in order to encompass all generations, see what you could create. And so we had a lot of fun. But let me tell you something. Ministerial students can get very creative when they want to, and their acting skills get enhanced in this particular class, because some of us had to be kids being called up to the front for the 10-minute talk. Right? You know how some unity churches, will call the kids up and they sit. Lots of traditional churches do it too, and the kids sit on the floor, and then the minister talks to them, tells them a story, whatever the message is, and goes from there. So I get up to do my talk, which was on Moses leading the Israelites to the Promised Land and following the tabernacle. And we played Follow the Leader. It was fun. But the kids, quote unquote, we're doing things like all of a sudden in the middle of something I was saying, one young lady, Brenda, said, "My dad just moved out." And we were trying to, not trying to throw the speaker off too much, but just enough, because that's what kids do.
Yeah.
I don't like the color yellow. I wasn't even talking about the color yellow, They just kind of, so we had 9 students in the class. So the first speaker, there was a little pushback, right? I was the second speaker, thank goodness, because there was more pushback, right? My dad just moved out. Oh, okay, well, we'll talk about that later and, move on. By the 9th speaker, we were rowdy. Oh my goodness. I said to our teacher, Reverend Diane Vanzera, I said, I didn't know we were going to enhance our acting skills like this, because I got really good at I played a little girl who was at the church for the first time, and I was Catholic in my upbringing, and I shouted to my mother towards the middle of the talk. I went, "Mom, I want to come back here. I like this church," and it's just like in the middle of interrupting everything. But we had some great interaction with each other, and every single class that I've taken, we get to know each other a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and then being in the energy, like we're on computers, right? We're in this little square box on the computer, and they only see from here up. So to be able to be in each other's company is just priceless, because we're all going through the same stuff. This is a master's level program. This is not, just write a couple of essays and you're done. This is a lot of work. And so we're all going through the same things, and we were able to encourage each other. So in preparation for our L&O interviews, we all worked together. We had the whole patio area at one point was filled with all of us students, and we were going back and forth asking each other questions. What's the difference between spiritual counseling and psychological counseling? I don't know. No, I did know. But they kept coming up with these different questions, and different students got different types of questions, and the reason is because they've had either more classes or less classes, right? So I got a question about being in a cultural bubble. And I knew that was from a class called Inclusive Ministry, which I haven't taken yet. And I decided that I wasn't going to say that as an answer. We are perfectly entitled to say that. We can say, I have no idea what that is, and I know I'm taking that class in the fall, and I'll get back to you in January when we do this again. And but I didn't do that. I talked about a cultural bubble as it pertains to me in the fact that I moved from Florida, having been there for 28 years in a particular cultural bubble, and now living in Hartford, which is a city which is quite different from where I was, and how I'm still working on that. It's an adjustment. It's an adjustment. I love it. I'm very happy where I am, especially with furniture, as you all know. So, but it's interesting, and I didn't tell them, oh, I haven't had that class. Give me a different one. Give me a different question, right? So, all in all, it was a wonderful process, but it is stressful, and I never ever remember that when I go back for the next round. I don't remember how stressed you can get. And the beauty of this is when we talk about things here like prayer, meditation, using these tools, etc., there's a reason for it, because it helps with every area of our lives. It just does. We have tools that we can use. When I was starting to feel stressed, I just went to the Peace Chapel on the property, which was where Charles and Myrtle first started their meditations, and I would go in there and I would just absorb all that energy, and I would just get quiet, and I would be fine. You know? So it was wonderful. And there are some students that will go through there, and they may not have been on concern to begin with, but then they're put on concern. And so we're there for each other to help encourage. Because that can get discouraging if all of a sudden you're put on concern. Or some people on concern, and then they are kept on concern. Again, that's discouraging, you know. So part of our job is there's this hidden curriculum of things that we get to do where we get to support each other. Where we get to, you know, say, wait a minute, don't give up yet. You know, just because 3 people or 5 people said, we have a concern, they're not kicking you out of the program, they're not telling you no, don't take any more classes. There's some things you need to work on. And that's where an open mind and an open heart will help, because we all have things to work on. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that too. So this is Unity Village. This is just one picture of there. The fountains are going. The fountains go from April until October, I think. Depending on the weather, they don't have the fountains going all the time because, of course, the weather, winter-wise, gets very rough out there. And so I just thought I would share that one picture with you. But we had a blast, and some of the students I started out with 3 years ago, they're graduating tomorrow. And so I'm going to invite you to just hold them in your hearts. They are just very special to me, and I did get to spend some time with them. I haven't seen them in a year because they moved forward with their full-time program, and I was still working on my part-time program. So it was beautiful to spend some time with them. And that's what I'm doing. I have no classes this week, and the new semester begins a week from tomorrow. And I will do this again the week of August 26th. So I will not be here August 25th that Sunday or the following Sunday, September 1st. And then I'll be back again, and we will do my trip to Unity Village, take 2. And I'll just share it with you, because again, I get to do this because you guys have welcomed me into this fold. I get to do this because you're here. I get to learn from you, and I did not have to share one bad story about any of you. It's pretty good, right? What I would like to do for the meditation is to work, we do the meditation of the Power of the Month meditation each month, and we missed it last week because I was out of town. And Mary wasn't able to be here, but I want to do this because I think it speaks to what's been going on with my journey and with all of our journey together. It's on the power of power, right? To have that dominion over our thoughts, words, actions, right? Sometimes we don't feel like we have that power. Sometimes we forget we have that power, but it's always there. So the power of power is located at the base of the tongue, or the throat area. So I invite you now to close your eyes if you feel comfortable and take a couple of deep breaths. And just let these words sink in. The Christ in me calls forth Philip, my disciple faculty of power. The words that I speak are spirit and life, and do accomplish that whereto they are sent. Let that focal point of attention travel upward to the faith center, in the center of the brain, and know that my quickened faith in God gives my words mountain-moving power. Power is one of the 12 attributes of man, to be awakened by our higher self and developed as part of our spiritual nature. It is an important gift, but it is to be used in conjunction with the other 11 qualities. Power is the vital energy that has its seat in the hollow of the throat, at the root of the tongue. Spiritual power flows into our bodies from the Christ center at the top of the head. It is released in the form of radiant energy through the center in the throat. Power is released by consciously speaking positive, powerful words of truth. The first outpouring of spiritual power may so awaken our desire to share the truth that we are tempted to overextend ourselves in trying to pass it on to others. But we can only serve as channels for power. We cannot store it and then release it. We must keep both ends of the passage open if we are to have spiritual power available for our use. It is through opening the inlet by prayer and receptivity to God, divine mind, that we fill our power channel to release good into our world. I take these words now into the silence. Power is developed as part of our spiritual nature, an important gift used in conjunction with the other 11 powers. Divinity in action. We release power by consciously speaking positive, powerful words of truth. And so it is.